the framework that I developed was loving myself, being clear on who I am, being clear on who I have the possibility of becoming, identifying steps that were almost impossible to fail at to move in that direction that made it progress easy. And then the last one for me was gratitude, is being grateful for everything, including the difficult experiences, and learning to value what life, what God, what the universe can teach you through the difficult things of your life.
Welcome to the Secrets to Abundant Living podcast. Your guide on this journey is Amy Sylvis, ready to unlock the keys to a life of true abundance. We're diving into everything from financial freedom and optimal health to meaningful relationships, geographic freedom, and everything in between. It's about creating a life rich in experiences, purpose, and joy. Get ready for empowering conversations, expert insights, and real-life stories that inspire you to live abundantly. If you're ready for the secrets to an abundant life, hit that subscribe button now, and let's get started.
Secrets to Abundant Living podcast community. I am overjoyed you are here with us today. I've got a new friend that I can't wait to introduce you to. We met just a couple of weeks ago, and while talking to him, I thought, oh my goodness, this is absolutely someone who my listener audience would love to meet. So before we begin, if you don't know who I am, my name is Amy Sylvis. I'm the founder and CEO of Sylvis Capital. We connect investors to hands-off commercial real estate investment opportunities. And I'm just thrilled to welcome our guest, Alan Underwood, today. Alan, thank you so much for joining us.
Amy, thank you. I'm so looking forward to our second conversation here. This time recorded.
This time recorded. And of course, we want to shout out to Coach Trevor McGregor, who we both know and admire tremendously. Thank you for this introduction, Coach T. He always has the most incredible people in his circle. So once again, he introduced us. So I'm very grateful he allowed this to happen. Can you tell us a little bit more about yourself? There's a lot to go over today, but just give us a little overview and we'll go from there.
Yeah, absolutely. And thank you. Well, I'll start off. I'm a husband. I've been coming into January now, it'll be 27 years. I've been married to my wife, Stephanie. We have 8 children, and 4 of them are still at home. So we're still enjoying that adventure. And, a lot of people like to measure their increase in their investments. Well, in the past year, we've had a 200% increase in grandkids. So we got our first 2 grandbabies, which we're enjoying very much. Outside of that, I'm a high performance coach. I help people like me who are or have experienced challenges find the resources, tools, and mentorship to overcome those challenges. I also run a private equity investment company. Primarily, we operate in San Diego. And for fun, I fly airplanes. So we can go, I'm sure, a lot of different directions there, but that's the 30,000 foot view.
I love it. And I love this. You say 30,000 foot view, right? But yeah, as a pilot, that's perfect. You from our conversation, spoiler alert to everybody, where you are today, you've not had kind of a straightforward, easy go at this life. Can you tell us a bit more about what prompted you to get into the various spaces that you're in and maybe what that's looked like along the way?
Okay, well, that's an excellent lead in. And I think where I'll start is actually, Amy, I'm writing my first book. So we'll give a preview. I wish I could say it's ready for people to go on and buy it, but we're a long way from that still. But I'll go back to a conversation that I had about 5 years ago this time. And it was with a friend. And he called and asked how I was doing. And I lied to him. And I said, I'm doing fine. And his very next question stopped me in my tracks. And he said, Alan, have you ever thought about killing yourself? And, I was standing on the front porch of my house. And like I said, it just completely stopped me in my tracks. And immediately my mind went back to a very recent experience of where I was sitting in the cab of my pickup truck, was looking at the open center console of the truck and looking at my 9mm handgun that was there and considering what I was thinking was that would be easier than what I'm going through. And it's difficult to imagine now that that's where I was 5 years ago. As I've thought about that, I've thought it's really ironic that 5 years ago, a 9 millimeter round cost 27 cents. And that was what my self-worth was 27 cents. And, we can certainly go into what brought me to that point.
Yes.
And it was a very compressed series of difficult events. We, in 2018, found out that my mother-in-law had cancer, and she never came out of the hospital. We lost her a week later. 13 months after that, my father-in-law's cancer ruptured his carotid artery, and I watched him bleed to death on the floor of his kitchen. That was extremely traumatic for a lot of different reasons. I was very close to my father-in-law. And then 13 months after that, my dad had a massive stroke and passed away. And, that succession of losses in such a short amount of time really had the effect of collapsing me internally. Visual image, in fact, my wife and I were talking about this morning, the visual image that I have in my mind is, if you've ever watched a big building be demolished, they'll set off some charges at the top and the top story collapses. And, maybe if they stop right there, the rest of the building is intact. But there's a series of other charges that just bring that building all the way down to the ground. And that's essentially where I was. And, I mentioned last of all that I'm a pilot. That was one of the things that actually was part of my recovery. I walked away from a very successful business in that state of not valuing myself. I didn't value anything else. I built a business that was doing over $16 million a year and literally walked away from it. I traded the keys to that business for $100,000. Not the best exit that I've ever had. And certainly wouldn't repeat that decision today, but that's what was necessary for me to move from where I was to where I am. And, I'm actually profoundly grateful for those experiences now. They've led me through the path that I needed to wander in order to get to where I am, to where I can also now help other people who have been in similar circumstances. Not everybody's has been maybe that deep,
Right.
but life is challenging on different levels. People go through difficult marriages, or right now there's a lot of people that have struggled with investments, multifamily investments or other assets that are causing financial stress and emotional stress and mental stress. And I can understand that, and which gives me the ability to help. So, Amy, I'll let you follow up from there where you want to go. But yeah, like most people that are listening, I went through a hard time and it brought me to my knees. And I'm glad to be walking again.
Wow. I so appreciate you being willing to talk about that, because I think for so many, even if they've been able to get to the other side and work through it, it's probably something they'd rather forget, let alone go on a podcast and talk about in detail. The gift for that is, I don't think any of us escape this life without, something deeply devastating, maybe, as you said, maybe not to that depth, but life can get hard. And to see someone who, when you first introduced yourself, I would imagine most people wouldn't have imagined that you had, considered, ending it all, but yet here you are. And I think, the topic of the podcast is abundance. And I would love to hear a bit more, if you're willing to share, kind of what it took to get through to the other end, because I think that's something that's valuable to all of us to really understand it and be able to, apply that to our lives if and when, God forbid, we're in a position where just the hits just keep on coming.
Yeah. Oh, great question. And I'd love to say that that was a straight line, but it also wasn't. There was progress and there was regress. The very first part of that, after losing both in-laws and my dad and then walking away from the business, and what I see now with the primary challenge was I was in an identity crisis. All of a sudden, what my family looked like had completely changed. What my professional life looked like had completely changed. And the way that I describe that now is, if most of us are familiar with the electrical panel on the side of our house. And you open up that panel and there's a bunch of circuit breakers, and those circuit breakers control specific parts of your house, your kitchen or your bathroom or your living room. Well, if you were to take each of those circuit breakers and label it entrepreneur, visionary, husband, father, man of faith, whatever things describe who you are and what you do.
Yeah.
For me, this period of my life was as somebody had opened up that circuit breaker, turned off all of those things, and then closed it and locked it so I couldn't have access to it anymore. And prior to this, admittedly, I didn't have a lot of compassion for people that were dealing with depression or anxiety. I thought they were faking it or just didn't want to go to work. I've learned now the hard way that isn't true. Probably what you want most is to be able to get up out of bed and go to work. And you just seem to be unable to do it. There's really something broken. And for anybody that's listening that is going through that, my first thing would just be to offer hope that, I don't think that I'm necessarily anyone special, but I have been able to get past that. And if I can do it, I think that means that just about anybody else in the world can do it too. And you may need some help, and I would encourage you to find it. In a lot of ways, that friend reaching out and being very blunt and asking me a direct question was helpful to help me reconsider where I was. Now, the solution that he suggested didn't turn out to be the right one for me, but I left that conversation wondering what did need to happen. And I didn't know how to move from where I was to where I wanted to be, but I wrote down on a note card, I wrote down there's 3 miracles that I need from God. And the first one is I need to feel happy again. The second one was I want to feel prosperous again. And the third one was I need to know that my life has purpose. And the beginning of the solution for me simply was praying about that. If you don't have a faith practice, that's okay. There's a lot of different sources that can say that was manifesting. Either way, whatever your belief is, as long as it helps you, I think that's okay. But for me, it was a deliberate act of faith and feeling like I couldn't do this on my own and I needed help from a higher power. That's when I discovered aviation. I had the idea pop into my mind that I should take a flying lesson. And the first flying lesson that I took lit me up inside. It was as if this person who was lost and afraid and forgotten who he was stayed on the ground. And there was this whole new creature that was born in the air. And I felt joy. I felt excitement. I had a desire to learn how to be able to do this for myself. And it must not have been something that I could easily hide, because when I came home and I walked in the door, Steph walked out of the kitchen and I didn't even say anything. She took one look at me and she said, "Oh, you found your thing today, didn't you?" And she could just tell that something had changed. Now, that didn't heal me. There was a lot of work to do. And I had to learn how to love myself. That was the first step, was figuring out how to love myself. That's something now that I love sharing with other people. Most people are never taught and never understand how to develop love for themselves. I had to get really clear on who I was and what my core values were. Also, part of the work that I do, I became really good at visualizing who I could become and then breaking that down into small steps and moving towards that. Also, in presetting how I was going to feel about certain events in my life rather than just letting my body or whatever decide. So if I was going to go to the gym and work out, I just told myself, you're going to feel excited and healthy and happy when you walk out the door. And I've been able to make that true. So the framework that I developed was loving myself, being clear on who I am, being clear on who I have the possibility of becoming, identifying steps that were almost impossible to fail at to move in that direction, that made it progress easy. And then the last one for me was gratitude, is being grateful for everything, including, as I said before, the difficult experiences that one has, and learning to value what life, what God, what the universe can teach you through the difficult things of your life.
Incredible. I'm imagining what you had gone through, both personally with your business, what you consider doing to yourself to end it all, and taking that first step to take the lesson and then to come up with these frameworks. Was it tough to take action? Was it something you really had to get yourself to do, or was it something that kind of flowed naturally and you were able to move forward like that?
Well, each of those breakers came on one at a time.
Okay.
So there was never a moment where I opened the box and went, "Ooh, I'm back," and everything came back all at once.
Yeah.
So to answer your question directly, at the beginning, it was impossible to take any steps forward.
Yeah.
And, really what that is, if you're in a car accident or you suffer any kind of injury, like the best thing to do right away isn't to try and make forward progress, right? First, you need to heal. And it's easy to look back on that time period with judgment and say, man, you weren't working, you weren't really being much of a help or support to your family. However, you can also look back with curiosity and ask really what was going on. And as I've been willing to allow myself a little bit of grace and look back on those experiences, I recognize that that was my hospital period. That there were really some things broken and injured. There were really some things that were hurting. And I don't completely understand the process by which those things heal. I think time plays a part in that. But the initial part was no, I really couldn't do anything. And that's why I was reaching out to God because I had hoped that He could when I couldn't. Now, as we fast forward 5 years, I feel incredibly capable of moving forward and, having surrounding myself with people that also have that belief. Working with an incredible coach and Coach T has been a valuable resource in accelerating that process. But the other valuable part of that is now sharing that with other people and really being able to take what I experienced and what I learned and watch that change other people's lives. And it motivates me to continue to grow and to be better because now I feel this responsibility to be in a place where I am confident and healthy and happy so that I can show up and help others who maybe aren't feeling that way right now.
Have you ever thought about having multiple streams of income? Instead of relying on just one stream of income where you're trading your time for money, how would you like to free up more of your time and live a more abundant life? As a listener of the show, you're invited to attend one of our upcoming trainings where I'll give you an inside look into how you can add passive income and get all the other perks of recession-resistant real estate investing without the headaches of being a landlord. I'll also be sharing some hidden mistakes to avoid and the criteria I personally look for when evaluating potential investment opportunities. To reserve your seat for free, go to sylviscapital.com/webinar. Again, that special link to reserve your seat for free is sylviscapital.com/webinar. I look forward to seeing you on the training. And now back to the show. So powerful to be able to go through it yourself and then share with others. I think about this concept of abundance, again, going back to the theme of the podcast and what culture teaches us, which is typically money, material goods, things. Hey, that's supposed to make us happy. That's supposed to make us feel abundant. And typically, if we're not lucky enough to learn the true definition of abundance or, true definitions of abundance from our family of origin, or maybe our religious tradition or spiritual tradition or some other influence, it takes sometimes, some catastrophic events in our life to really shift and help us understand what does abundance really mean. And that's all I can think about when you talk about giving back and using your experience to help others. How would you share, or how would you say that your definition of abundance has changed over the last 5 years, if at all?
I'll let you know how it's changed in the last 6 months.
Okay.
So after I learned to fly, I started volunteering my time and this newfound hobby and passion that I had for aviation with an organization called Angel Flight West. And Angel Flight West provides free, non-emergency medical transportation for people in need. We do 4,000 to 5,000 flights every single year. And about 6 months ago, I lost one of our pilots, and his name was Jim. And Jim spent the last 30 years of his life donating his time and his airplane and serving others in more charities than I can count, not just with Angel Flight West, but with others. And he received some national recognition for his efforts. And in receiving that award, he said something that actually now is hanging on the wall of my office because it's one of those things that inspires me and I feel like is pulling me towards the life that I really want to live. In fact, if it were engraved on my headstone at some point, I would be very happy about that. And what Jim said was do as much as you can for as long as you can, for as many as you can, and in an airplane if you can. And
I love that.
I think anybody can take those first three and have an abundant, happy life.
Yeah.
The fact that I get to add to that, being able to do it in an airplane because I can is such a great blessing. But, you know, abundance, certainly financial wealth is a part of that. You know, the five freedoms that Trevor Townsend do right? The financial freedom and location freedom and time freedom. And out of all of those, one that's often overlooked is impact freedom. And, you know, for me, you know, I really believe that wealth is a byproduct of the number of people that you serve. One of my favorite books is The Go-Giver, and it teaches that principle.
We've had Bob Berg on the podcast, believe it or not.
I just received an invitation to meet him, and I am so excited to be able to do that. But I really think that as the focus of my life moved from how much can I earn to I really need to heal to, oh, wow, there's a lot of other people out there that really could use some help.
Yeah.
My life has gotten exponentially more abundant. Now, I think the finances are catching up to that. I created a pretty significant crater for myself by walking away from that business. But I also worry about that a lot less. And what's become really important is the opportunities that I have to serve. I'll give you one example of that in the way that another really powerful thing with serving others and giving is it reshapes your perspective of your own problems. So over the course of the last 18 months, I've had a real focus on my personal health. In fact, I just completed a bodybuilding competition for the first time. Yeah, it was torture for 18 months. And that's what you mean by nice, especially in the last couple of weeks where basically you're starving yourself to death and then you dehydrate yourself and all of that so that you look pretty on a stage.
Yeah.
What I didn't anticipate is those last 2 weeks, severe caloric deficit, that has a pretty dramatic effect on your brain's ability to produce dopamine and serotonin and all the things that help you to feel happy.
Wow. Really?
And I found myself revisiting some of the darker moments of the last 5 years. And thankfully, I had developed some tools and I'd learned how to be able to pause. So when I was feeling overwhelmed, I would slow down and I would meditate. But the thing that helped me most during that time period is I got a phone call from my friend Lorraine. 12 years ago, Lorraine lost her 12-year-old daughter to childhood leukemia. And a few months after that, she lost her husband to stomach cancer.
Oh my gosh.
I think for most normal people, that destroys you.
Right.
Lorraine created a nonprofit organization in Arizona to help kids who are fighting childhood cancer. And she now helps 1,200 to 1,500 kids a year with the financial burden, the emotional burden, the physical burden of childhood cancer. And she's such an inspiration to me. But so in one of those dark moments that I had chosen to take myself into by starving myself, I got a phone call from Lorraine and she said, "Hey, Alan, I know this is the last moment. I'm at Phoenix Children's Hospital and I'm with the family. Their 16-year-old daughter is going on hospice tomorrow. She's always wanted to fly. Do you think you could do that for her?" And, you know, here I was throwing a pity party for myself because I was trying to get in shape and look pretty on the stage. a situation that I had put myself into. I had chosen to be there, and all I could think about was I have a 16-year-old daughter, and this family didn't choose to be in that place.
Yeah.
It immediately reminded me of how blessed I am and what a great privilege I have to be in a place where people like Lorraine know me, know that the answer to that question will always be yes.
Yep.
And I've had, because of the difficult things I experienced, I understand what it feels like to be in dark places. My youngest daughter was in the NICU for 6 weeks. She was born with a severe birth defect, and we spent 6 weeks wondering if she would survive. And so the blessing from that is I can go into a hospital setting and feel totally at home because it was home for 6 weeks for our
Yeah.
family, and understand what the commotion is and what the machines are. And it doesn't throw me off. And I can sit there and connect with people. I can understand what it means to know that you're going to lose somebody.
Yeah.
I can understand that. So I can go into those dark places with them and hopefully provide just a little bit of hope. And because I've been there, I now have something that I really enjoy by way of aviation that can bring a lot of joy to other people. This past weekend, I had 40 other pilots and myself had a huge party, and it was for kids with life-ending and life-altering conditions. And so they would come to the airport. We had music and food, and the end of that experience was they got to come out, and we took them on a 15 or 20-minute flight
Oh,
around Phoenix. And I'll tell you, so I love the movie Top Gun. I'm sure a
yeah.
lot of your listeners will also. I love it even more now. My last flight of the day was this 8-year-old boy who was autistic. And as we're walking out to the plane, his dad and turned to his mom and said, "Are you going to play this song?" And I said, "Oh, what song?" And they're like, "His favorite movie is Top Gun." So, like, yes, absolutely. So, turn on the theme song for Top Gun, and we're walking out. This boy's so excited. We get him in the co-pilot seat, and on the controls of my airplane, there's a red button that deactivates the autopilot. Well, what he saw was a red button, and he said, "When we get in the air, can I shoot the missiles?" And I said, "Absolutely." So we spent our flight dogfighting whatever enemies he can see in the air. And what a joy to be able to take something that I enjoy and now use it to serve other people. And all of us, while I would certainly recommend to anybody to become a pilot and use that to
Yeah.
serve other people, we all have our own things where we can brighten someone else's day if we take the time to look for it. And that's why I'm so grateful for what I have experienced is it's made me a better person. It was hard. And now I get the joy of watching other people's lives change and be improved because I'm sharing something that I love to do. And I just can't imagine anything better. So that's what I've learned in the last 6 months, or at least what's been more codified for me is at the end of my life, if somebody will say he did as much as he could for as long as he could, for as many as he could, and in an airplane because he could, I would feel pretty happy about that.
I'm not sure I'm going to be able to have more words, Alan. That's just such a touching story. And I'm positive it's just one of many in terms of the lives you've impacted. You get the award for being the first person to make me cry on my own podcast.
Yay!
As you and my listeners know, I live with cystic fibrosis, and I knew many children growing up who passed away before their 10th, 12th birthday. I was a Make-A-Wish kid myself, and I just think it's so beautiful. I mean, I'm 44, which is the wildest thing to be able to say that I was a Make-A-Wish kid. And the Make-A-Wish Foundation actually doesn't, I think, grant awards to people living with my illness anymore because of how much progress has been made in the disease. But the point is, yeah, the fact that someone knew that they could call on you to make a difference in, not only the child's life, but obviously the family, I'm sure was just overjoyed. And you've chosen to do that. And I just don't have words. Thank you so much for sharing that story. I'm positive it's inspiring. It's inspiring me. I'm positive it's inspiring our audience as well. Wow. Alan, as we wrap this up, I'm positive there are people going through really tough times right now. They're in it, right? And it is so hard to see the forest from the trees. They've
Mhm.
heard it's not a platitude, but what might feel like a platitude of this is happening for you, not to you. If you could speak to just one person to help them get through what they're going through, to uplift them, to encourage them, to see the abundance in it all, what wisdom would you impart on them?
Well, what a great question. I think a lot of that would depend on exactly where they're at in that journey. But
Yeah.
at the beginning of that journey, what I would say is the day will come. I just had this experience Sunday. I shared my experiences in my church
Ooh.
with a group that I hadn't shared this before. And I had a lady come up afterwards and she just said, "Can I give you a hug and just tell you I'm glad you're here?" And for those that are going through difficult times, the first thing I would say is, "Can I give you a hug and just let you know that I'm glad you're here?" And, I carry a reminder of that. So if I open up the lock screen on my phone, it says be there. And that's what motivates me now. And I would just invite people to be there. And, it will be hard.
Mhm.
It will also be worth it. Identify the smallest step that you can take
Mhm.
towards recovery. And that may be I got out of bed and took a shower today and then I went back to bed. And that's okay
Yeah.
for where you're at. When I started this silly bodybuilding competition, literally my first goal was, Alan, you've got to get up and drive to the gym. And if I just drove to the gym, I got to check it off. I didn't even have to get out of the truck. I didn't have to walk inside. I didn't have to lift a weight. I just had to prove to myself that I could take that first step. Now, and that doesn't count anymore. I wish it did. It would make my mornings easier. But that's what I would tell people is first of all, let me give you a hug. I'm glad you're here. And just continue to be there. And the day will come when someone will thank you for the efforts that you made to be there. I'm sure of that. And the other thing, if I can help in any way, I'm pretty easy to find. I might not always be as easy to get a hold of, but I'm pretty easy to find and I will respond to whatever messages I get.
Well, Alan, I'm sure glad you are here. And thank you again for showing up and sharing your story to encourage. I'm honored to be able to amplify your message. I'm grateful to call you a friend. How can folks reach out to you if they want to get in touch with you? I'm positive they're going to want to.
I've tried to make that really easy. My website is thealanunderwood.com.
Great.
That's, I think, what I am on LinkedIn. I know that's what I am on Instagram. I probably should make sure that's what I have on LinkedIn, but that's the easiest way is from my website. You can find me on social. You can schedule a time to chat, whether you're interested in coaching or investing, or if, I have a link on there to sign up for a free flight with Angel Flight West if you or someone you know is traveling for medical care. So regardless of what you need, I hope that my website serves those needs.
Amazing. We'll make sure to put all of that in the show notes so it's easy to get a hold of you. Thank you again, Alan. Really glad
Oh,
to know you. Thanks for all that you're doing.
thank you. Thank you for what you do. You've been delightful.
Oh, thank you. Bye, everyone. We'll see you on the next episode. Thanks for joining us today.
Thank you for joining us on another episode of the Secrets to Abundant Living podcast. We hope you found inspiration and valuable insights that will empower you on your journey towards abundance. If you enjoyed today's episode, don't forget to subscribe, rate, and leave a review. Your feedback means the world to us, and it helps others discover the secrets to an abundant life too. Stay connected with us on LinkedIn, Amy Sylvis. Keep striving for your goals, nurturing your relationships, and embracing the adventure that is life. Until next time, we wish you an abundantly fulfilling day.